Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining the second virtual DOE Office of Indian Energy Program Review. I'm sure you'll find the presentations informative and inspiring as well. So next slide, please. So I just want to do the introductions. For those who I haven't met yet, my name is Luiseno. I've been in the energy development field for about 25 plus years. And I've been working with tribes in Alaska villages and Native communities on their energy development for over 20 years now. Yes, I just stated myself, I'm sure. I am a mechanical engineer by degree, and in my current position as a deployment supervisor, I support the Department of Energy's deployment program by executing the deployment program. We have a three-pronged approach, which is financial assistance through competitive grants, technical assistance at no cost to tribes and eligible tribal entities, and education and outreach. Additionally, I manage the national funding opportunity announcements and have acted as a project officer on many, many grants over the years. In addition, we implement the outreach through website, emails, webinars, and oversee support of our laboratory and our other TA provider entities. So thank you all for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to Tweety to introduce herself and give the welcome.
Thanks, Lizana. Welcome everyone to session 5 on our second day here. My name is Tweety Doe, and I serve as the project officer for the Office of Indian Energy. That means I get to work with some of our grant recipients, including the ones who will be presenting today. I have been with DOE for over 12 years already, and with the Office of Indian Energy for about a third of that time. And Lizana and I go all the way back to 2004 during my CERT days, the Council of Energy Resource Tribes. I really do appreciate the challenging, the hard work that you all do to forward clean energy access Indian country, and I feel very blessed that I am able to work with some of you on that journey. All right, so let's get started on the next slide, please. Before we jump into the project presentations and allow our 4 presenters to review their projects, I wanted to provide a few event details. Today's webinar will be recorded and it will be available on DOE's Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs website in just a couple of weeks. Copies of the presentation slides will be posted to our Office of Indian Energy website shortly, and everyone will receive a post email with the link to the page where you can find the slides and the recording. Because we are recording today this webinar, all phones have been muted. We will answer your questions at the end of the final presentation of this session. So you may submit them though anytime that while you're hearing the presentations, to put them in the chat box. For the presenters, please ensure that you are muted when you're not presenting. This will eliminate some of the background noise that could pop up. And if we do have a tight schedule, so if I see that maybe you're getting close to the time or running over, I will pop in. So please excuse my interruption if that happens, but I'll try to monitor the time here for us so we can stay on schedule. Again, please enter your questions for everybody who's listening in the chat box, and we'll get them answered at the end. Next slide, please. This program review is the reporting requirement for all of our grant recipients. So anyone who's receiving financial support from our office is required to provide an update on your project on an annual basis. This is really helpful, especially in the past couple of years here when we are limited on our travel, so we can't visit some of the sites where these projects are taking place. And we love hearing about your successes as well as any lessons that you've learned, so we don't have to repeat them too many times. And it's a great opportunity when we're all in person to network and, learn and inspire new projects. I know that Melissa from Blackfeet Community College has attended past reviews, and it inspired her to, submit projects. And so I hope that happens, with this virtual platform as well as next year when we're in person, I hope. All right, so let's get started. If we can pull up the slide deck. For this session, this is session 5, we've got 4 projects from Graton, Rancheria, Blackfeet Community College, Paula, and Pechanga. And first to present for this session will be RT Browning. RT, I don't know what that stands for. I'm surprised I haven't asked you that yet. So maybe you can tell us. So RT is the technical contact for this project, and I think Tim Campbell is out in the audience for questions that we may have later on. And RT, you're going to be talking about the Great Renewable Energy Efficiency Network, Cleverly Green, to install about 2.4 megawatts of solar PV on the Graton Resort and Casino rooftop. The floor is yours. RT,
thanks,
will
Tweety.
you pull up your slide deck?
Yep, very good. You stole all my thunder, so thanks for the warm introduction. So once again, my name is RT Browning. I am the technical contact. As Tweety mentioned, Tim Campbell, which is the grant administrator with Graton Rancheria, is on as well. That'll be helpful to answer any questions, towards the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So just quickly about our tribal background and where we're located. We are the Federated Indians of Graton Rancheria, Coast Miwok and Southern Pomo peoples. We're about an hour north of San Francisco, right off the 101. We consist of about 1,400 tribal citizens, and our government arm is the Graton Economic Development Authority. So we are located in Rohnert Park, California, in Sonoma County. Next slide, please. So in 2017, we were awarded the grant. Obviously, that was 4 years ago. We had several challenges that I'll get to a little bit later on in the project. It's to install the 1.5 megawatt PV system. Fortunately for us, with a little bit of the delay, the technology with the PV system, as most of you all probably know, really increases every single year. So with the redesign of the project, we're looking closer to 2.4 megawatt just based on the technology from the time that the grant was originally submitted to where we are now. In addition, originally the grant was for $1 million, but through available COVID funding, we were able to reduce the tribal burden significantly, and the grant is now for closer to $2 million, as you can kind of see here on the slide. Our tribal match is $1.6 million. Projected ending of the project is September of 2022. We actually anticipate beating that quite a bit. We expect to be substantially complete by the end of the year and fully implemented by the end of the first quarter of 2022. Our project overall, just a little bit more. It's as far as some of the highlights of the project, we got 4,700 plus 450 watt modules, and which consist of about 17 inverters, and the production that we expect on our system will be equal to 350 to 400 single family homes. Next slide, please. This map here just really shows exactly where the project is located, where the rancheria is located. Next slide, please. When we started the project, obviously we started out with a series of goals. I'd like to just walk through them quickly. If you go onto our website, Graton Rancheria, you'll see that one of the big goals of the tribe is environmental stewardship. We feel like that, this, along with some other projects we completed on property, has really spoken to that. We want to create sustainable renewable energy resource for the tribe, establish tribal energy independence and energy choice, provide our tribal citizens education in the solar sector, and encourage information sharing. One goal that's not really mentioned here, but is becoming apparent, is that actually, as energy costs continue to increase, specifically in our area, we were just notified by PG&E, we're able to supplement 10%, or a little bit over 10% of the overall power requirements for the property with our PV project. Next slide, please. I kind of covered some of the specifics of the project earlier. When we originally started the project, we did go through a renewable energy systems analysis with Kenwood Energy, our consultant partner. We're very fortunate, as you can see here on the slide. I mean, we have a lot of open roof space that we were able to capitalize on and get those 4,700 modules onto the roof. This is our second renewable energy project that we have on property. We did install throughout the property some electric vehicle charging stations back in 2015. Next slide, please. Really 4 tasks on the project. We're obviously on task number 3, as you'll see with some of the slides here shortly, with the progress that we're making on property. We're probably about 90% through the installation process, which is our task 3, and then following the install and implementation is Tim will be heading up the community education on our project. Next slide, please. A couple of challenges when we originally dove into the project, and I didn't mention this before, but it is the tribal enterprise where the EV or PV project is located, is actually the tribal casino. Any of our, I saw that there's a couple of casino operators that are here, recognize the fact that anytime you have any type of power disruption whatsoever, it has a detrimental effect on our business. So one of the things that we were able to do and to work with the Department of Energy on was to have them work with us as we continue to increase our backup energy power here on property. That project is actually, this morning I went through, we had our full functioning test of our generator project that provides 100% redundant power to the property in the event of a power loss. As we do the interconnection with PG&E, there is going to be an extended power disruption on property. By having this backup generator capacity that we've added to the property, we're able to roll over onto the generators as we do the PG&E tie-in, which really helps us to be able to sustain our business without any business disruption. As I mentioned before, with the length of the project from the time 2017 to where we are now, one of the advantages was we were able to, the generation with the same amount of modules, we were able to increase that. Another issue as well, when we had to go about and rebid, if any of you guys have worked on solar projects here recently, is the demand for solar vendors. That pool is starting to become very shallow now, and making sure that we were able to select a solar partner in Borrego Solar to implement our project. So we're pretty pleased with their performance to date, and they've been very, very good partners moving forward. Next slide, please. I've covered most everything on this slide. The one thing I didn't touch on is we did get our interconnection agreement in place with PG&E. We actually have that shutdown scheduled for the 30th of this month to be able to bring on the PG&E component that's required in order for us to complete our project. Next slide, please. As we go through these next series of slides, this is just a little bit of eye candy. Getting access to the roof and being able to hoist all the equipment is really the first slide that you're looking at. Next slide, please. This really speaks to the quality of work that Borrego Solar has done out here. Our partner for the install. I mean, very, very clean install of the distribution and the racking system. Next slide, please. This is just a couple pictures as the transformers and the electrical equipment was showing up on site. Next slide, please. And then lastly, the meat and the bones of the project, the transformer and transformer pad, as you can see here in this photo. Next slide, please. That really wraps up my presentation. Again, we've really good partners in our project, Kenwood Energy, which helped with the RFP process, and then ultimately Borrego Solar Systems, which is our solar partner. And then, as I mentioned before, Tim's going to be taking over in early 2022 with our community education. And next slide, please. And if anybody has any questions or anything else following the presentation, feel free to reach out. Here's my contact information as well as Tim's. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Archie. I think you've got some time back for us, and hopefully we can get some questions for you at the end here to fill in some of that time that you gave back to us. All right, next on
Perfect.
Our agenda, we have Melissa from Blackfeet Community College. Melissa Weatherwax is the Director of Institutional Development for BCC, and she's going to talk about their sustainable energy project to install 4 grid-tie solar PV systems on campus facilities that total about 33 kilowatts. Melissa, as soon as your slide deck is, you are on. Thanks, Melissa.
Okay, everybody. Itamik Sistikunistu Nitanikum Melissa Little Plume Weatherwax. I'm happy to be speaking today and hope you are all safe. I wish I could see you all person to person. I'm at Blackfeet Community College, and we're a tribal college located on the Blackfeet Reservation. Our project is the Sustainable Energy Project, Blackfeet Community College Sustainable Energy Project, and we installed solar equipment onto 4 older facilities. My position as the Director of Institutional Development oversees facilities, IT, Title III, our physical development of the campus, and lots of other student hands-on programs, experiential learning programs. Next slide, please. I come to you from the Umskapi Pikani. Our reservation is located right next to the Canadian border and the Glacier National Park, if any of you have ever been able to visit. We have 1.5 million acres, and it's managed by the Blackfeet Tribal Business Council. The project and the grant were authorized by Council for Blackfeet Community College to participate in the program. We have 17,000 members. We have ancestral connections to Canada through Alberta, Saskatchewan, and we are the only band in the United States in Montana. Next slide, please. The Blackfeet Community College is chartered by the Blackfeet tribe, which we were chartered in 1972, and we became a land grant institution in 1994. I like to mention the land grant institution because that's the status that my department actually kind of focuses on, and creating programs and moving forward objectives. And some of those the project kind of followed some of those guiding principles of holism developed by 1994 land grant institutions, one being holism, integrating multidisciplinary and team-oriented approaches, sacredness of land and food, emphasizing environmental stewardship and sustainability, cultural identity, promoting understanding and respect for cultural differences and strengths. 1994 programs also are guided by cultural viability, dealing with problem-oriented solutions with direct benefits to their people and their communities. I just kind of wanted to mention that because that was a huge driving factor behind us participating in the energy program. Next slide. So our project description, I won't directly read off of the slides, but what we kind of started out with was a larger community project, building in a local high school and being able to help them install. However, we in the efforts to be able to train a larger workforce, in recruiting from local high schools, our Tarot office and our Blackfeet Community College math and science programs it was open to all students across disciplines. Our project budget was, we installed 53.2 kilowatts across 4 facilities. There's our older facilities, our Red Fox facility, which holds our business division. Our Little Star Blackfeet is our Blackfeet child care. Medicine Shield facility is our fitness center, and the Muskrat Lodge is our media center. Our budget was $204,401, and that was all contractual with a little bit of travel. Our equipment, we had purchased modules, inverters, the racking, electrical BOS data acquisition system, O&M labor. Our training, we had a huge interest, so that was kind of the exciting part for us, is we had a huge interest in students being interested in being trained in solar. We had recruits from the Tarot office, the Blackfeet Tribal Employment Rights Office, Blackfeet Community College, Heartbutte High School. We had 14 interested, and we selected 10, and we had 8 completed on the BCC project with another number on a different project in the community at the Heartbutte High School. And the idea was to be able to advance student knowledge about renewable energies and pushing that forward. The facility on the previous slide was built in 2010, a LEED Platinum building. So we just want to continue at the college to promote the renewable energy platform in the community and help others to be able to access or to learn more about it and hopefully implement across tribal facilities and hopefully tribal housing. Next slide, please. I kind of already talked about this part, but here's our students kind of lined up in their first days of training. They actually sat for a week before they started this, but they had a hands-on training. It was paid. They learned different. They had a week in classroom, and this is the start of their hands-on training and being out on the facilities. The building they're standing in front of is the Red Fox. Next slide. So today, our project schedule, we have the installation complete. We have the installation completed. April through May was the ordering. We had a lot of designing and planning previous to April. But as far as the physical launch, we had the ordering in April and May, mobilized May through June. It was a lot of coordination to get folks up into Browning. We have limited, I guess, accommodations and different things like that. We were a long ways out. We had trainees for 3 weeks. They completed, we recruited from BCC, Blackfeet Community College, Heart Butte High School, and the Blackfeet Tarot. We had 8 trainees who continued with grid alternatives, and that's a really exciting kind of highlight for us, because that was the idea, was to help students to be able to explore careers and training and in the renewable energy field. We completed the installation on June 30th, 2021. And so now we're moving into our we've installed the monitoring, and our IT staff was trained, and we're still continuing that training. We had a few issues with the equipment, but we're working those things out right now, and training will continue. The next slide, please. Week 1, Graton was the classroom aspect of the training. We had week 1, grid alternatives, orientation, safety basics, solar energy basics, energy efficiency and weatherization, tribal energy and policy, net metering, off-grid system basics, soft skills and resume building, system sizing, employment readiness, OSHA 10 certification. And these were also, I believe, made available through other partners and different accessing different trainings made available through energy programs. And thank you to GRID for the wonderful, thorough training, GRID Alternatives for the wonderful, thorough training for our students. So we moved on to week 2 and 3, which was the hands-on training with racking installation, minor maintenance, small equipment, and wire harnessing. You could see down in the corner here, one of our students was able to get a small equipment training, and they were trained in the safety. They were just doing all kinds of things, different things every day. So next slide. So coming up, we're not finished yet. We'll be finished in the coming year. So we'll have our system performance verified. Our monitoring, we'll continue to monitor and keep an eye on the performance and throughout the monitoring system, and help to report that to our tribe, to our partners, and to all of the folks that are looking at installing, getting into renewable energies. Verification, task 7, verification of energy savings. Vendor staff will collect utility bills in coordination with BCC staff and prepare reports to submit to DOE staff. So we'll be working on our final reports in the coming year. We'll complete and submit comprehensive final report as part of the task at least one of myself and GRID Alternatives will attend the program review, hopefully in person next year. Next slide. Some of our challenges was the location. As you can see, Montana, we're right up against Glacier National Park and the border, Canadian border. Some of the challenges was the equipment ordering. We just, a small challenge, and I would just thank the vendor for overcoming those in a really great way. So students just got a little extra training in those gaps of timing, but it was a matter of a day or two, and some equipment was leapfrogging. Other equipment were very rural, and new drivers and different things had some issues there. But we had a wonderful, unexpected outcome. We got our decrease in match. Our decrease was from 50% to 10%. So they can see our tribal council, our BCC board, and our tribal college administration. They're celebrating the visit of the Deputy Secretary of Energy. And that was due to the COVID-19. COVID-19 did provide many challenges across our community as far as being on site, folks being infected, and just the fluctuation with the virus moving through the community was a bit of a challenge, but we overcame it. That was mostly up front in the planning stages. So I really thank our vendor for and our also our support from DOE and helping us to get through those challenges. Next slide. So here is another highlight. We had the 2 trainees. Jaden comes that night, and Thelma Wall. Jaden, a brand new high school graduate, and he'll be continuing on with grid alternatives and helping other communities to be able to install renewable energy. Thelma Wall was a Blackfeet Community College student in the pre-engineering program. So these are 2 examples of the main goal of the program. I mean, well, we'll get to the savings here in a few minutes, but I just really wanted to congratulate them and highlight them in the project. Next slide. So here's our savings. We're cut off just a little bit, but we finished, and we were able to compare a little bit in as far as our facilities so far. So for 3 of the facilities, we actually zeroed out, and that was really a big accomplishment for us, because that was kind of, we thought the idea of zeroing out, when, as Tweety mentioned, we attended program reviews before, and the concept of zeroing out and the training are really what we wanted to bring back to our campus. You could see where 2021, where it says $29, that's only a service charge. That's not charges for any energy use. The little star is used for from probably 7:30 to 6 o'clock in the evening sometimes, and that's our child care building. It's one of our older buildings, so we were able to save some money there. The Red Fox building had quite a bit of savings in August, being 233.08, and September 233.30 compared from 20 to 21. So we're already showing a huge advantage to installing the solar. Next slide. So I just want to thank the Department of Office of Indian Energy, the Blackfeet trainees, the Blackfeet students, Grid Alternatives, Bonneville Environmental Fund, First Interstate Bank, Glacier Electric, Hart Butte Public Schools, and Blackfeet Tarot for the recruiting, the installation. All of it came together really well on everybody's hard work here. So I just want to end with that, and we'll take it. Thank you for letting me present.
It looks like Tweety is temporarily unavailable. Maybe you want to step in, Luiseno?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Melissa. We really appreciate it.
Sorry, I have myself on mute.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I had myself on mute on the computer here. What I did say was that congratulations, Melissa, on a very first successful project, and thank you for sharing that with us. Next, we do have Shasta Gone up, and Shasta is the Environmental Director, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Paula Band of Mission Indians, and this is one of our newer projects. Shasta will be talking about the Paula Community Microgrid project that will install over a megawatt of solar PV and about 10 kilowatts of battery energy storage system, and integrate that into the integrate the PV into the existing battery energy storage system as well. Shasta, as soon as your slide deck is up, please start.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tweety. And hello, everybody. As others have said, I'm sorry that we can't be together in person to really be able to talk with one another about these projects when we're away from our formal presentations and really learn from one another. But nonetheless, I'm glad we're able to at least be here to share in this format. And I am glad to be able to tell you a little bit about our Paula Community Microgrids project. I am speaking to you today from Payom territory, or Luiseno territory, in San Diego, California. And I am the environmental director, also the TIPO here in Paula, and I've been working here for almost 17 years. And this is not the first of our DOE projects, but it's definitely the biggest. So next slide, please. So just a little bit about the Paula community. So here on the right, there is a map showing the reservation boundaries, and then the inset is where we are located relative to all of San Diego County. And for those who aren't familiar with California, we are the southwesternmost county in California, which means we're in the southwesternmost corner of the United States, right on the US-Mexico border. But Paula itself is very close to the border with Riverside County, and our neighboring tribe, Pechanga, to the north is going to be presenting next. So I'll be delighted to hear what they're working on since we're such close neighbors. But Paula, from a nationwide perspective, is not a very large reservation. We're about 13,000 acres of trust land. There are some additional fee lands that we are in the process of putting into trust. And we have about 1,000 residents, not all of whom are tribal members. There are about 1,000 Paula enrolled tribal members. About 600 of them actually live on the reservation. And our other residents are either family members of our tribal citizens, or they're other folks who have moved onto the reservation and are renting, for example. So we have a fairly small amount of folks, and I just say 13,000 acres is small by international or by national standards for tribal lands, but it's actually a pretty good sized reservation from a Southern California standpoint. We are, I think, the third or fourth largest reservation in San Diego County, which has 18 total tribal nations. Next. So I mentioned that this was not our first project with Department of Energy or the Office of Indian Energy. So pictured here is one of our previous projects, which is the Paula Fire Department Solar Project. And as you can see, we've covered the entire south-facing roof of the main fire garage, and that houses the fire equipment, and also installed a shade structure, a parking structure at the top of the picture, which was interesting because when we originally engineered that, it was a much lower elevation for the roof. It wasn't as tall. And then the fire guys said, you know what, we need to be able to back up and turn around our equipment here. It needs to be high enough that a fire truck can get underneath it. So we ended up having to change that a little bit to be able to raise the height on that parking structure. But that was a really good way to get started with a project like this, that it was located just in this one area of the reservation on one building in one department. And then working backwards a little bit, we ended up doing some other work on a Paula Energy Options analysis, which was also DOE funded. And honestly, we should have done that first so that we could see where the most likely places were on the reservation to do sustainable energy projects. And of course, being in Southern California, solar is clearly a really important resource for us, which might not be the case for everybody. But that was what we determined with our energy options analysis, was that we have a lot of capacity for solar as a sustainable energy source on Paula, not just on an individual building scale, but also potentially on a utility scale. And that's what you see in the figure on the right here, is the 6 different recommendations or options that we developed under our Paula Energy Options analysis. And a lot of that has now been helpful in the current project that we're working on. But I also want to briefly mention our solar feasibility report, which was not through DOE, that was a BIA, EEMD, I forget, EEMP, there's so many acronyms, but we focused on the solar energy specifically in that solar feasibility report, especially with an eye on developing more of a community scale energy project. All right, and now for the current project. Next slide, please. So here's the bullet list of what our objectives are for this project. And we just were awarded funding for this in August. So we are at the very beginning stages. But what we had discovered in doing our options analysis and in our work on the fire department was that we really wanted to expand into microgrids. So the project on the fire station is not a microgrid. So we still have that issue when we have something like a public safety power shutoff or a PSPS, which other California tribes will be familiar with. I'm sure Graton has experienced this as well. This is when the utilities make a decision to shut down power in rural areas when there are heightened fire conditions, and particularly wind and heat and dryness, so what we call Santa Anas out here. And when those happen, there's a risk of wind having an impact on power lines and potentially knocking down lines that can then spark fires. And you hear about all the fires that are in California, and many of them have started in exactly that way. So in San Diego County, we are under San Diego Gas and Electric, and they have declared several PSPS events where power has been lost. And so without battery backup or without a microgrid, our power just goes out regardless of whether we have solar on the facility. And that's not great when you're talking about your emergency facility like the fire station. And so we identified for this project 8 different facilities that we wanted to make sure still have access to power when there is a public safety power shutoff event, or when there's any other event that might end up impacting power to the tribe and its most important facilities. And I'll go over what those are in just a moment. But our main focus here is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our tribal citizens, and of course, other residents on the reservation. And then we also have to consider visitors to the reservation. We do have a large casino that is usually doing pretty well. And so there's a lot of people there that could potentially be impacted if there were some sort of a power emergency. So our goal, as you see here, is to displace 102% of our electricity consumption at these 8 targeted facilities. And 102% is obviously more than everything. And so we're building in a little bit of a cushion there, because that's another one of our goals is the energy savings. Energy costs a lot. So over the life of the solar panels and of the installation, we could save $6.4 million in net energy costs. And so that's quite significant. And of course, I hope that in a couple of years when I'm presenting on the final project, we're going to be able to have some comparisons to show you, just like the previous presenter did, on how much we've been able to save with this installation. And then the climate change issue is also really important to us. So even if there weren't a health and safety issue as far as PSPS events and other electricity emergencies, it's the displacement of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere over the life of the project is important to us on a cultural level in terms of values. We want to start to pull back on our contributions to the climate crisis by transitioning over to sustainable solar energy. And then, of course, that also supports our self-reliance and our energy independence as a sovereign tribal nation. It would be nice to be able to support ourselves completely on our own energy production. And the hope is that at some point in the future, we will be able to do that independently, or at least in partnership with SDG&E's electrical grid. So again, finally, displacement of imported fossil fuels and utilizing our own tribally owned renewable energy resources are long-term objectives of this project and future projects. Next. So I wanted to just call out some of the participants of our project. And I, again, am the head of the environmental department. So we are directly responsible for this particular project. And we have terrific partners in a consultant that we worked with on our previous energy projects, and that's Prosper Sustainably. And then also the Microgrid Institute, which is based in Minnesota, but we've done a lot of work with them as a consultant on developing our plans. And the other two are Our Energy and Swell Energy, which are potentially going to be the contractors on the project itself, but during the proposal process provided us with a lot of the technical information we needed to put in a good proposal to DOE. And then, of course, San Diego Gas and Electric. We can't do this without interconnection to San Diego Gas and Electric's grid, so they are a necessary participant in the project. And I'm happy to say that our relationship with them has gotten better over the years. It's not always been perfect, but it is improving. And of course, we have our tribal participants as well. So these are the facilities that are going to be a part of our distributed microgrid. So the Paula Administration Complex, which is the largest piece, that is our main building that houses our executive committee offices. My department is in the administration building, so is our finance department, senior services. This is where our tribal meetings take place, and we also have a large kitchen where we have a lunch program for our seniors, not just here in Paula, but on some neighboring reservations where we provide low or no cost lunches every day of the work week. And then a part of that is our fitness center, which is used by many tribal residents, but is also open to the public for memberships. And then Res Radio, we have our own radio station, which broadcasts within about a 1 mile radius in the Paula Valley. But we are also working on, or I should say Res Radio itself, in partnership with some other departments, is working on increasing their spread and frequency to partner with other tribes so that we can use Res Radio for many communities during emergencies to provide information. And so it's important that Res Radio be a part of this because, again, in an emergency, if there's no power, we still want our radio station to be able to convey information to the surrounding community. And then we have our Paula Tribal Law Enforcement, again, an important part of health and safety on the reservation. Our utilities department, which is largely responsible for water. We have all groundwater here on the reservation, but we need pumps in order to draw that water from the wells. So it's important for the utilities department to be a part of that. Tribal services, which is where we have all of our things like land management and roads maintenance. And again, an important department in regular times, but also during emergencies. The Paula Fire Department already has solar, but we're going to tie it into this larger microgrid project. Our Paula Youth Center, we want to make sure there's a safe place for our youth to go. And especially when, again, a PSPS occurs, it's usually in a time when it's hot, which means that people can't run their air conditioning. So the youth center is important for our children to be able to go and stay cool if they don't have air conditioning in their homes. And then finally, the wastewater treatment plant, which again, we have an extensive sewer system that we've been able to put in since 2001 when the Paula Casino opened. It needed to have a sewer system. So many of our other tribal facilities and our tribal residents are hooked up to the sewer system. So that wastewater treatment plant needs to be in continuous operation. So we included that as well. Next. Here's a map showing where the different facilities are located. So you can see that we have our Paula Fitness Center, the KOPA radio station, or we call it locally Res Radio, and our Paula Administration Complex over on the right with the Paula Wastewater Treatment Plant to the north. And then the other facilities are more on the southern portion, or I'm sorry, the western portion of the reservation, close enough to one another that they can be linked as part of this larger project. So we have a pretty clear eastern versus western portions of this project. And then as you can see on the left, this came from our, I'm sorry, on the right, this came from our application just showing the potential locations for the solar PV. And then the BESS, these are the distributed energy batteries that we're talking about installing as part of this project. So that way, when we do have those power shutoffs, we have enough battery energy to keep our critical facilities running until the power comes back on. Of course, depending on how long the outage is, but it should be enough for potentially a couple of days worth of energy. And then in the meantime, because it's a microgrid system, we'll be able to draw on the batteries during just the regular day and use that during higher peak energy cost times so that we can save energy and then use those batteries when they're at full charge and then recharge them during times where energy is less expensive, so that we've got that balance between running on the batteries and then having to draw from the regular electrical grid. You can see in the upper left portion of the right graphic, there's all these blue triangles in our Paula Tribal Administration parking lot. And so those are going to be the parking shade structures. And I'm hopeful that, unlike the fire department, we're not going to have to make these tall enough for a fire truck to get underneath. Next. So status, I know our previous presenters talked about status because they're a couple of years into their project. So it's great for me to listen in and listen to what they've encountered. And I'll be curious to hear about more during the question and answer period of some of the difficulties or the barriers that they may have run into and how they overcame them, so that hopefully I can avoid running into some of the same problems myself. Because again, we just started. We just got approved in August. And we are in the process now of trying to lock in some of the energy rates for the, and suddenly I can't remember what the acronym or what the term is, but basically the energy costs are going to go up as far as what SDG&E is willing to buy for excess energy. And so we're trying to lock those rates in before they get higher, because as we all know, as solar becomes more and more common, the energy companies are worried about losing money. And so they are not being as friendly as they used to be about paying for excess energy that's generated and goes back to the grid. So we want to make sure that we get in there before they change those rates. And that's all I have. I know that next year I'm going to have a lot more to talk about, just because I know we're going to have gotten a lot further down the road on the project. As Melissa mentioned in her presentation, COVID has been a little bit of a barrier for us, just in terms of being able to have in-person meetings with our various stakeholders and things. But it seems like, thankfully in California, at least Southern California, things are getting a little bit safer as people are getting vaccinated and getting their booster shots. So I'm hopeful that COVID isn't going to be too much of a barrier for us. And also, just like some of the others, we were able to take advantage of some of the CARES Act money and the opportunities for tribes to save some funding in terms of their match on these projects. So we were able to get a lower match. This is a $3 million grant, and instead of having to do a 50% match, we were able to do, I believe, a 25% match on this. So we only have to come up with $1 million for our portion of the project, which is really nice. It gave us the opportunity to spread it to more facilities than just our big tribal admin complex. So last slide, next, has my contact information, and I know we're going to be sticking around after Pechanga's presentation for questions and answers, and I'll be happy to take your questions at that point. And I'll throw it back to Tweety. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shasta. I really, appreciate the reminder that you have, the importance of why you're doing this project for the community, the people you're serving, the infrastructure for that support the community. So I really appreciate that reminder. And we do have lots of time, so I hope people are typing in their questions for our presenters that we will address after Pechanga. Next, we have Peta and Margie, who will present. I think this is the last first step planning grant that we have, and they will be talking about improving energy efficiency and self-sufficiency on the Pechanga Indian Reservation, and where they study the feasibility and identify options to expand the tribe's utility electric service. Peta, Margie, as soon as your slide deck is up, you can get started.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Peta Pitt, and I'm the general manager of Pechanga Western Electric here directly north of our last presenter. So great job on that presentation, and excited to hear what's going on. About 10 miles south of us. So it's really exciting to see all the other presentations, including up in Graton in California, as well as Blackfeet. I've been fortunate enough to be traveling and have seen both of those places, as well as go through Paula quite a bit. So this is really exciting and inspiring. As I said, I'm the general manager of Pechanga Western Electric. We serve energy users on the Pechanga Indian Reservation, located here in Temecula, California. We're right on the Riverside County border, but basically just north of Paula, who's in the San Diego County border. So we serve residential, commercial, as well as government load. Next slide, please. And so a little bit of background information for us is we are a utility who serves customers. It's the first in California to be at the retail level. It's been a learning process and very exciting to be able to provide such a needed service to our tribal members, community, as well as our commercial and government load. We have less than 30 residences, but they are very important to us and have been a really interesting learning aspect of this project. And so we've been able to learn more and provide options for future expansion. All of those loads are now connected to Pechanga Western Electric, and they were previously served by an investor-owned utility by the name of Southern California Edison. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that's unique about our situation here at Pechanga is there are a large portion of residents on the reservation who are continuing to be served by Southern California Edison. We refer to that as the residential area. And as the previous presenter pointed out, here in California, especially Southern California, we have experienced public safety power shutoffs, where investor-owned utilities basically just shut down whole circuits of power in advance of winds or conditions that they deem problematic to be fire hazards. As you may have noticed watching the news, PG&E up north has been in court multiple times, and there's a lot of risk involved for folks in the utility business. So essentially the utilities will just shut off power whenever they're kind of worried about it. So the 207 residents, as well as the residents that PWE serves, are faced with these shutdowns. And so that's kind of one of the drivers that we have here in California. The electrical infrastructure in the residential areas still owned by SCE. The report is really for us to try to figure out creative ways to look at value the SCE infrastructure and look at other options for serving our residents. Next slide. So one of the things that we decided to do was an assessment of the actual electrical loads in the residential area, as well as a full GIS mapping of all equipment. And it's one of those things that I will suggest to folks that are looking to go down this path is really taking that early time investment to get out on the ground and actually look at and log in any way that you can find that best suits you. For us, GIS mapping was very important, and getting all of the basic inventory of the equipment that is located on the reservation and adjacent too, as some of those circuits are important to talk with your local utility about their plans going into the future for those specific circuits. And we realized that there was a lot of limited data that we needed to fill in the gaps. So we were able to do that, and we approximately located about 2 megawatt hours, a non-coincident peak load of approximately 500 kW. It's not very huge in terms of power usage for the residential customers that are remaining on SCE. Next slide, please. So again, we worked with Ellen Consulting to gather information and make projections to get that best information in front of leadership and tribal members to be able to make decisions going forward. We obtained SCE system drawings. Those types of information sharing, I suggest getting started as early as possible with the local utilities, as some things that seem like they're going to be easy may turn out to be a longer lead time or more of a challenge to get. And it really helped for us to reconcile with the data that we had existing from being out there and having our own data. So it's helpful to gather what you can, as investor-owned utilities generally, at least here in Southern California, can be huge, and their systems have been long-standing for decades. So sometimes the records may have changed names, or different kind of issues can come up. So I would just suggest for people to take heed on that point, as it's a one little bullet point here, but actually takes quite a bit of time. So we were able to create spreadsheets with detailed listings of all of the overhead assets and underground assets, which helps in the valuation for possible negotiations between the tribe, PWE, and SCE. And we're able to kind of get a really good understanding of what's going on the reservation. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did was really look at doing a market study, power study, which helps us get information, and the expansion of, we have an existing 4 megawatt cogeneration. It's a little 4 and change megawatt cogeneration facility on hand that we have running within the PWE system right now. So we really wanted to look at how that's performed for us, and whether we should increase that or look at other areas. And so the other piece was on-site large scale solar, demand side efficiency options, and distributed solar and battery options. So this grant really helped us gather some critical information to study options going forward. Next slide, please. So the market power study gave us a good handle on the easiest way to serve the residential load would be to slightly increase PWE's purchase of market power. But then you have the sort of larger questions of how do you get that power to the residents? And that brings into sort of a really interesting discussion with California independent system operators, as CAISO is who we import power from on the grid. And we are in negotiations and discussions with them on what it would look like for PWE to increase its participation in the CAISO market. So for the California people, I definitely, and any others actually who are thinking about connecting to the larger grid, learning about how the wholesale energy markets work in your local area will be a good step in evaluating options going forward. So for us, we've been learning and working with CAISO to look at how we can maximize our federal contracts that are on Hoover and Parker Davis dams, as well as looking at our imports into our system. So right now we're at about 5 megawatts to 10 megawatts per month. Serving the load would require updating our forecast, as well as looking at future purchases. So that was a critical step for us, and we're glad to be able to have this grant to help us investigate that. Next slide. Expansion of existing generation on site is something that we are continuously discussing, and natural gas in California is a hot topic on a lot of levels. So we have seen a lot of savings from our local cogeneration facility, but we still are weighing options to either do some dispersed smaller cogeneration facilities, or possibly a larger one, as our load is continuing to grow here locally. But we will continue to investigate these opportunities going forward, as well as looking at existing upgrades to the system that's there, but with the idea of real strong microgrid functionality being a part of it. Next slide. On-site large solar is something that we've always been looking at. Has been noted, Southern California is very sunny. We do have limited land base, so right now we are evaluating areas, but we have gotten near completion on a 1.1 megawatt solar rooftop on our casino garage. And so that was kind of an interesting use of existing land space that we were able to lock in. And we're excited about that and possibly scaling that up, and with this grant able to kind of look at how community solar could help us going forward. Next page, please. Residential energy efficiency is always something that's, I think, definitely a good place to start with, as there are a lot of upgrades that can be done on existing residential customers. One thing that we are looking at doing is really getting into an energy efficiency sort of program where we could possibly provide appliances or different types of audits, but we also have recognized that there's a solid privacy interest that folks have. So negotiating that and navigating that is important, and we are definitely respectful of our residential users' privacy, and we're building relationships, and I think gathering solid information on what would benefit them and how we can help them. So it's something that we definitely are investing time in, but it has also been time intensive. But I think it's, in the long run, it's going to be well worth it, as we're able to gain cooperation as well as just support internally with our end users, and hopefully we can continue that relationship and build out this project as it's highlighted as something that is important for us to go forward. Next slide. And on the demand side, renewable options, we've been looking at a lot of different options here that have been discussed earlier. And some of them we will go forward with or provide options for our community to take their voice and let it be known what's going to be the best for them. So I can definitely see a few of these working for us, as we have a lot of solar. We definitely are looking at off-grid battery backup. We're looking at individuals' sort of ability as residential customers to make decisions on how they would like to connect to the grid. So there will be more for us to share at a future date on this, but we are negotiating and discussing net metering with our customers, as well as looking at what programs that under SCE that they're available for, or how PWE can help them in the future. And next page, please. With an extension, we were able to do a right-of-way review, which was an interesting point for us, as rights-of-way aren't as clearly defined in some senses as they can be off of reservations. So I will definitely add that this really helped us gather information that's relevant, but also we were kind of led to a place where we decided that we could move forward without going too far into it. But I will add, rights of way is something that should be flagged for folks that are looking to go forward down the path that PWE has. On the next slide, we are definitely considering community solar, and that was on paper something that really looked like it could work out for us. So this was able to help us get to a point where we can look at solar as an alternative to expanding PWE service, whether it be like dispersed community solar on residential customers, like as individuals, or one large project. We're still looking at how PWE can gather information in real time sort of bids, where we were able to put out an RFP to start getting real pricing on what it would look like. And it was really helpful for us, because I think a lot of times you can look at solar, and if you have 20 acres or you have 25 acres somewhere where you can lock that down for a project, then it's going to be very attractive. But if you don't have that, you have to look for creative alternatives. So that's kind of where we've been able to use this time to get RFPs for some real pricing. So we're able to explore that, and we're continuing to look down that path. Next slide, please. Our next steps is going to present a lot of information to our general membership for their discussion and decisions on going forward. And so we're very thankful to be able to use this grant and work with DOE to be able to get this going for Pechanga Western Electric to gather valuable information for decision making, as it's very important and a generational type of decisions, as a lot of this projects are 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and even bigger when you really start thinking about it. So we're excited to continue on, and I would like to take a moment to definitely say that the Res Radio down at Paula is something I enjoy. So I appreciate that you were able to share about them. As whenever we cruise through that area, we always turn the radio on and wish it had a further extension. So it's good to be amongst neighbors and relatives from all around Indian country, and DOE hats off for helping all of these projects, and Pechanga Western Electric and Pechanga Band's projects in particular. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peta, for nicely rounding out our session 5 here. It's great to hear about the different stages of project development, from planning to starting on a project, execution, and near completion, and the different scale of the project. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to answer a lot of these questions that are coming in. So I'm going to pass it over to James Jensen, who does an amazing job at interpreting some of the questions that come in and moderating them. James, I'll give the mic over to you.
Thanks so much, Tweety. I just got word that Melissa's phone is dying, so we'll go to her first for a question. And if it dies, Melissa, while we're talking, we'll know what happened. Melissa, can you talk a little bit more about any COVID-related issues you had, and how you kept the project team or the trainees safe and just handled those general issues of construction during COVID?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so luckily our COVID in our community, our wave kind of hit like in the design phase of the project, but by the time we got ready for being on campus on the ground, it was kind of mellowing out. But what we were able to do was we had a really strong safety guidelines on campus, and we just followed all of those. And because we were at the beginning of summer, and our hardest hit was probably in the fall before. So we kind of lucked out in that way. But students were, followed all of the precautions and stuff like that way. But we had a lot of great support too, in just finishing up the grant work and everything from the DOE staff and from the vendor.
Excellent. And thanks, Melissa. And appreciate your time today, and glad that you didn't get any interruption from the high winds. Melissa let me know they were gusting up near 100 miles an hour today.
Yeah.
Her neck of the country. So, all right, thanks, Melissa. We'll let you go. I mean, please hang on, but I don't anticipate any further questions for you. But if we get them, I'll see if you still have cell service. Moving on. Unfortunately, actually, my connection to my network has died, so I need to operate from memory now. But a question for Paula and Shasta is, how did you pull your project team together? Can you just give some insights there? I think you have a couple of consultants and maybe like a nonprofit or something.
Yes. So honestly, I don't have much advice to give on that, because I have been working with that consultant team for a long time on a lot of different projects. And so when the DOE opportunity came up, it was just an automatic for us to keep working together on another project. And then it was the consultant who brought in some of the technical experts to fill in the more complicated aspects of the application. So that was all on their side. But I would, for just more general recommendation, I would say find out from other tribes who they're working with and get their feedback. One name that you hear a lot is Grid Alternatives. And so they're a good place to start. But just reach out and ask who else people have worked with and who they've had a good experience with, because it's not always a good experience. So for the person who asked the question, if they're interested in contacting me directly, I'd be happy to connect them with my consultant.
Thanks, Shasta. A question for Graton. It looked like you had a flat membrane roof on the casino. Is that what's the lifespan of that roof, or kind of the estimated lifespan? And do you anticipate having to, repair or replace the roof during the life of the solar modules?
Yeah, so we've got a 25-year warranty on the roof. So the system's primarily ballasted, the racking system. There are some mechanical connections throughout, but 25 years. We were pretty diligent on inspecting the roof and making any necessary roof repairs prior to the racking system going on. Our property right now is, we just celebrated our 8-year anniversary. So, kind of kicking the can down the road for hopefully at least another 15 years before we have to do any major roof replacement or repairs.
Great, thank you. Another question for you, RT. So the project had significant delays, obviously. I think you did mention it, but can you elaborate a little bit on how you overcame the issues, or why the delays were, why you had multi-year delays, I guess? Just delve into that a little bit.
Like I said, for sure. So our major delay was, and again, thankfully, the Department of Energy was able to work with us, was really deploying the full backup power system for the property. That was a pretty big financial commitment that the tribe needed to make and contemplate, and getting that system online. Much like as everybody else has discussed with the COVID related delays as well. I mean, we're very fortunate, to be honest with you, that we haven't had to deal with some of the port issues up at the Port of Oakland as many have down in Southern California. So from a module delay standpoint, it was pretty quick, but based on where the modules are coming from a production, that pushed out 3 months as well. So to kind of summarize, I mean, it was really, the main year delays were as the Department of Energy was working with us as we got full redundant power to the property.
Great, thanks, RT. A question for you, PETA. It sounds like you're kind of at a decision phase, or very close to a decision phase. Can you talk a little bit about how the utility authority is organized, and I know you said you're bringing the choices to the membership, but is it, I guess, how will the decisions be made at the end? Is there some sort of governing body, or is it just a vote by the membership?
That's a great question. And I can say that this is going to be my first sort of rodeo at this type of and scale of decision making here at Pechanga. But one thing I can say certainly is that Pechanga is a direct democracy, where a lot of the decision making is delegated or retained by the general members. So the voting age tribal members make a lot of decisions. And so I envision this as being PWE, my department, bringing information to a council level, and then most likely from there taking some decision action, but providing options at a general council level. So I think it's going to be a sort of two-tiered filter of information that's going to eventually make it out to general membership to be able to pick the path that they would like to see for their future generations. But like
Excellent.
I said, this is my first rodeo, so I could definitely be surprised, and I'm not an authority on exactly how it will go, but that's the way I'm envisioning it.
Understood. Yeah, thank you. A question for Paula. What's your current energy rates? And maybe that's at the commercial scale, commercial level, and have you looked into large scale wind in your area?
So I don't have our energy rates right at my fingertips. I apologize. I tend to leave those details just in the pages of the proposal, and since I don't write the checks, it's not burned into my brain. I will say it's not cheap. Our energy rates, as you can see from the presentation, if we're potentially going to be saving $6 million, then there's a lot of savings to be made, so there's a lot of money that goes into those rates. And I also, thank you, I think it was Pita who said net metering. That was the phrase I was trying to think of when I was presenting, and that escaped my brain. Net metering rates are changing, and not for the better for those of us who are going into solar. So I apologize for not having that specific information. And also, it's important to bear in mind that the rates are different at different times of day. So sometimes obviously more expensive than others during peak usage. As far as the wind energy question, yeah, I thought about that. There are times where I'm sitting in my office and I can see that the wind is blowing like crazy outside, and I think, gosh, we should do some wind out here. But in Paula, we're in a valley, and the wind is not consistent enough to be an efficient producer of wind energy. Some of our tribal colleagues to the south in San Diego County and then up in Riverside County in more of the Coachella Valley, they have a geography that's perfect for consistent winds for wind energy, but it's not really an option for us here.
Thanks, Shasta. Another question for you, and it's, I guess, an understanding question, but are you planning on 2 separate microgrids, like an eastern and western one, or is each facility going to be its own separate microgrid?
I don't know. I probably should, but see, this is the reason I hire consultants. It's so that they can figure that stuff out and I don't have to. I think that we're definitely going to have one that's going to be focused on our tribal administration building specifically, and then the others are going to be, I think, tied in together. So I do think we are going to have 2, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So yeah, again, I apologize for not having the detailed information that you're asking for.
No problem. That's you're at the beginning of your project, as I recall. So
yeah, and I'm the director. That means I don't have to know anything. I just tell other people to do stuff.
All right. So that's it for questions at this time. So I'm gonna. Looks like we might be ending a little bit early. I'll pass it back over to Tweety to wrap us up.
Thanks, James, and thank you again to our presenters, Shasta, Pita, Melissa, and RT for sharing your stories with us today. This does conclude this session 5. Again, the presentations will be posted in a few days and the recording available within the next week or 2. If you do plan on attending the next session 6, I believe it is, or future sessions, please use the link and call-in number that was provided in the calendar invitation that you received when you registered for that session. And if you haven't registered and would like to register for future sessions, you can go to the agenda that's on our website and register for the one that's coming later today and the next couple of days. Otherwise, we will see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.